Welcome to another episode of Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. Tonight we have an awesome show for you guys where we're talking about all things NBA, so let's get started.
Welcome to Jasmine Pollock's First Impression Sports Talk, the fastest growing sports talk show in the country. And now, here's your host, Jasmine Pollock.
Welcome back to Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. And before we get into the topics of the night, I want to do some self-promotion. Of course, if you want to keep up with me and keep up with what I'm doing with my show, if you want to be a guest on my show, you can visit me on JasmineOnSports.com to get all the updates that I'm doing, all of my show links and everything like that. It's going to be Jasmine on Sports. So let's bring in Jeremiah. We're going to talk about the NBA. And the first topic of the night, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving. So there's been talk of him. Of course, it's been him in Brooklyn for the past 2 years, him versus Brooklyn. So there's been reports that the Knicks and the Lakers are looking to, try to acquire him. What do you think about that? And where do you think the direction of the Kyrie and Brooklyn Nets saga is going?
Oh, man. I feel like when it comes to Kyrie, he is a dynamic player, especially when it comes to his offensive game. He will get you buckets. And to me, I think of him more as a scorer rather than a whole point guard facilitator. But at the same time, for these teams that's going after him, what kind of Kyrie are you getting? Right. Because you've seen just what happened when everything was so sure. He is next to, arguably people say that he is next to top player that is in the NBA right now, which is Kevin Durant right now. Because, and it's like, you cough that away and you invite him all the way over here from a great situation he was at with Golden State. Mm-hmm. And then now you're leaving him high and dry. So what's going on right now? And that's my thing. Before it came with KD, he had problems with Boston. And then, he left the Cavs. So as a team, would I say I would go for him? Yes, but I wouldn't go for no max deal, though.
I agree. Also, when it comes to Durant and Kyrie, Durant followed Kyrie to Brooklyn. Like, it wasn't, they were like, okay, you're my best friend. Let's go to Brooklyn together and just try to accomplish anything. And so far has not been what they had hoped for. And then, of course, you get James Harden. He's gone also. And I feel like for Kyrie, he is such, like you said, a dynamic player. Like, we've seen what he can do and what he's capable of doing. This guy can go get you 50. He can get you 60. We saw what he did in the finals in 2016 when he had hit that big game-winning three. And then, of course, LeBron had the block before that. But Kyrie, I don't know if he loves the game of basketball, because I know a lot of guys out there like LeBron, KD, who love the game of basketball. Steph Curry loved the game. And Kyrie is like, 1 minute he's in, the next minute he's out. So I'm not really sure if his heart is solely into playing basketball. And I feel like him and Anthony Davis, are like in the same boat, like certain things that they say. And I'm like, do you guys really love playing the game of basketball? Do you really want to compete at a high level? And for me, Kyrie would have won more championship had he stayed in Cleveland, 100%. I believe if he stayed there with LeBron and did what he was supposed to do and not, okay, I'm going to force myself to get surgery to get out, he would have been in a much better situation. And ever since he split from LeBron, he hasn't been to the final since. And there's no excuse for that. And we're going to talk about Kevin Durant later and his legacy, but it's just really unfortunate because Kevin Durant, he does love the game of basketball, and he wanted his friend, okay, I got Kyrie, I got my guy. He's not showing up for him.
Yeah, because when it comes to Kevin Durant, that's the only thing when it comes to, I have such a problem with when it comes to him. It's all about keeping others around him accountable.
Exactly.
He's all about, I just want a ball, give me the ball, and that's it. But it's like when you are a leader of your team, when you are let me not say leader, when you are arguably like the best player on your team, you gotta have other ones accountable to make sure that they're on the same path as you are. Exactly. Because we've seen the same thing that happened when it came to Golden State with Draymond Green. He deflected himself and then he went away and then he left the team. With Kyrie, things happen and build up, and then you wonder why things are happening like this. It's all about taking charge and putting your team together, because obviously he can say this is all about balling at the end of the day, But if it was about balling, he would never left Golden State. If it wasn't about if it only was about balling, he would never left OKC.
Boom, you hit the nail on the head. That was perfect what you just said. But like when it comes to Durant, we'll talk about Durant later, but let's talk about the little next mini subject. The NBA thinking about shortening the league. Okay, so they're thinking about shortening it from, it was 82 games to 78, to going to be 78, and then they want to do a tournament within the season. What is your take on it? Should they shorten the series, or not shorten the series, but shorten the league? Like, should we see that?
To be honest with you, I don't think that they should go all the way in for it, because this is my thing. This is what separates the normal guy like myself from a incredible athlete of a basketball player. It's all about that hard work and everything else. Now, it's a difference when you look at the mentality that was in the 90s and, of course, in the 80s and even the early 2000s. It was no like, I'm going to just say resting off. It's like, we going to be playing hard and everything. But today's NBA is very different. A lot of guys, they get, have their money, and then they can kind of be like, oh, we need to relax, have these certain times. Now, I agree. Injuries have been at a skyrocket high like these last few years when it comes to, not be able to see your star players out there and seeing that competitiveness. But at the same time, even if you're trying to, minimize the season, you're still going to have these certain injuries no matter what. And at the same time, I would say the league and plus these players, you're going to lose out on much money, because although they're going to shorten the season, you're still be shortening your salary.
Not to mention, you already have guys that sit down and sit out, load management. So it's like, okay, you shorten the season. You have guys that are already sitting out. You have guys who sit out on purpose because they're not getting paid, or they want to sit out and they don't want to play for a particular team, i.e. James Harden, what he did. But I don't think they need to do this. We don't need to change the NBA at all. It's already changed enough from the 90s era, early 2000s era to now. It's already changed enough. Leave it the way it is. For one, what I think needs to change is the officiating. Like, that's one of the main things that needs to change, rather than, let's think about shortening the season. No, let's talk about these officials. Let's talk about the officiating of the NBA, which is terrible, and it needs to be fixed. Also, we see in the NFL. Now, NFL has some bad calls, very bad calls. Now, I'm not going to say they don't, but at least in the NFL, there is instant replay. In the NBA, they don't do instant replay enough. And it's like, okay, and I think it's a lot more easier in the NBA than it is in NFL, because there's so many moving parts going on in the NFL. And that's one of the things that I feel needs to change. They really need to hone down and really need to crack down on the officiating, not shortening the whole season. I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, it's very unnecessary to me, because especially as, basketball watchers as ourselves, now you're talking about showing the series. Now you're talking about plugging a lot of games within the week. Right. So you're trying to avoid injuries by having, less games and everything else, but you're causing more injuries by having these games so close within the week. Because you got to know, when it comes to playoffs, it's always going to start within, I would say, April, March or April, and then the NBA Finals. And it has to go at a certain schedule for summertime. Not to mention, the NBA needs their money as well. If you're having so many teams that's playing at the same time, especially a lot of fans teams, and everybody is stuck on one, you're kind of clogging the mind with so many people playing at one time, to where you got to let fans enjoy it.
Also, for me, the NBA is heading in a very not good direction. Like, I'm seeing this trend going on in the NBA that I'm not really happy about. I think there's a lot of things that have to change, and we could talk about that another day. But in the NBA, I'm really worried. It was one of the leagues that I favored a lot. Of course, NFL's at the top, but now it's starting to go down and stop for me, because, like the players, a lot of the players, I think players have a lot of the power now. which is I'm all for players having their power and being able to speak and being able to say, hey, I'm not happy with something, but I feel like it needs to be balanced. It's not balanced in the NBA. The officiating is not balanced in the NBA. There's just a lot going on. And then the awards, the MVP, regular season, all of that is just out of control. And then, of course, the super teams, people joining this person and that person, and certain people not wanting to do this, sitting out, load management, all of it is just a mess and it needs to be fixed. But that wraps up this segment. We're going to talk about Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and their legacies in the next session. But we're going to hear from our sponsors, Rent the Runway, The Smoke Shack, and Falling from the Sky. We'll be right back for more First Impression Sports Talk.
Welcome to Jasmine Pollock's First Impression Sports Talk, the fastest growing sports talk show in the country. And now, here's your host, Jasmine Pollock.
Welcome back to Jazz's First Impression Sports Talk. And we didn't get to hear from our sponsors, but just for more promotion, I want to talk about my website. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, keep up with my show links and everything like that, you can go to jasmineonsports.com. And if you want to be a guest on the show, you can definitely email. There's an email section on the website where you can contact me, Leon, to get in contact with me so that you can be on the show. So the final segment, we're going to talk about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. So we're going to start with Steph Curry first, Jeremiah. Let's bring you in. So when it comes to Kevin Durant, or Steph Curry, and Steph Curry just won his 4th title, and he won his first Finals MVP. So there's always the talk of, is he the GOAT? Is he top 10? Is he top 5? Is he the best ever to do it? Is he the best point guard? What is your reaction to Steph Curry being the reigning Finals MVP, winning his 4th title? What is your take on everything?
Well, of course, Steph Curry, he changed the game in a great way, especially when it came to the 3-pointers, inspired so many young ones.
Yep.
But, congratulates him for getting, his 4th championship and, of course, the Finals MVP. But he is no way in my top 10. I would put him in my top 15. And just in my opinion, that's just only facts because I know what kind of player Steph, has himself to be. But at the same time, it's just a whole nother league when you see, like, when you have like the top 10 within a LeBron, a Jordan, a Kobe, and so many of them to where it's like those guys at a different level. And I wouldn't put him too much forward, but I do have him, of course, as one of the all-time greats. And of course, I'm 15, like I said, a Hall of Famer. But I'm not putting him too much above when it comes to that standard of, these are the top 10, or has him as like the best point guard of all time. No way.
I want to first start by saying congratulations to the Golden State Warriors for winning their championship. But back to Steph Curry. I don't have him at all in my top 10. Not in my top 15. I think he's 15? The greatest shooter we've ever seen. Yes, 100%. He shoots the ball in volumes that is unmatched. Like, we have never seen anything like that before. Well, of course, you see the Ray Allens, then of course you see the Steve Kerrs, and all great 3-point shooters. But the way Steph Curry shoots the ball is phenomenal.
Insane.
But that's the only thing I get from him is the shooting. I feel like he has good handles. He has decent handles here and there where it's like oohs and ahs. Okay. Pass the ball. Okay. Doesn't play good defense. That's it. The only thing that I could say for Curry is his phenomenal shooting. And that's probably the only thing he probably needs is his phenomenal shooting. But
because Jasmine, go ahead.
But what I was saying was, like, when you talk about greatest of all time, we're talking about top 10. All the guys, and I have my top 10 list. I'm going to say this is not in particular order because I know people are going to get upset about it. Mm-hmm. So I have Michael Jordan, Magic, Kareem, Bill Russell, LeBron, Shaq, Kobe, Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, and Wilt Chamberlain. I believe any of those guys could play in any era. Steph Curry couldn't play in those eras, like 100%. If you look at how intensified the game was back then, how the intensity of it, Curry could not withstand that. I believe LeBron could go back then and play at that era. I believe he could do that 1,000%. But can Curry say, you know what, if I'm the greatest, that means everybody feels you could play in that era. I don't believe he can do that. I believe Jordan could play in this era. I believe Jordan could average 60 points if he played in this era.
Oh,
Kobe,
definitely.
of course, he could play in this era. He did play in this era for, before he retired. But all of those guys I just listed could play in this era because of how, lackluster the game is now, how, it's changed a lot. The intensity of it is not the same anymore. But it's no knock to Curry's, greatness, because I think he is great. He's phenomenal, but he is nowhere near in the top 10. And I do not think he is the number one point guard. Absolutely not. But go ahead, Jeremiah. What is your take on that? What is your top 10? Before we go to a midpoint break, what is your top 10?
Well, in no particular order, I'm going to say, of course, Michael Jordan, of course, LeBron. These are on top of my head. Didn't really get a chance to write down. But, of course, LeBron. I'm having, of course, Michael Jordan, LeBron, Magic Johnson. Gotta have, I would say Shaq on there, Tim Duncan. Dang, well, it's so hard because you don't want to leave nobody out, especially the top 10 of so many things that they've done. And that's just my point exactly. Curry has to go through a lot of these guys to try to get to a top 10, and look, I understand, especially what he has done for the game as well. But even when we're talking about like point guard and just like scoring wise, even as Allen Iverson, I would say Curry's, of course, a better shooter and everything else, but a guy like Allen Iverson, that dude was relentless. And you saw what he did to, a struggling 76ers team that took him all the way to face Shaq and Kobe's team. It was huge.
I didn't even think about that one. Allen Iverson, of course, he's great, but I didn't even think about the points you just made.
You have to go through so many. That's why just putting him in the top 10 just because he has the 4 rings. And I see a lot of people is like, oh, he has 4 rings just the same as LeBron, so that means he's better. And I'm like, whoa,
no, that's not
calm the brakes. Calm the brakes, because as an individual, you can put LeBron anywhere and he is going to be phenomenal.
And the knock on Curry,
he's on the same team.
Before we go, the knock on Curry, my last 10 seconds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
2 of those rings you won, you had to get somebody else to come help you. That's another thing. But we're going to talk about that guy named Kevin Durant after the midpoint break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, Rent the Runway, Falling from the Sky, and The Smoke Shop. We'll be right back.
Renting is everything. It's style at your doorstep. Off the runway and into your closet. It's every trend you've been dying to try. And every designer you've yet to discover. It's wearing it your way every time and making it count everywhere you go. It's never worrying about what to wear because something new is always coming your way. That's why renting is everything. New styles, top designers, all for a flat monthly fee. Start your subscription at renttherunway.com.
Slow roasted over hickory fire and pulled by hand. This is the way pit pork has always been done. Pulled pork lovers, rejoice. The smoky old days are back at the Smoke Shack. From the creative team that brought you The Browning Project and Dead by Morning comes a new thriller that will change the way you look at white-collar crime forever. Falling from the Sky.
You're watching Jasmine Pollock's First Impressions Sports Talk. Be sure to join Jasmine every week for great conversation on the NBA, NFL, and a wide variety of sports topics. To see past episodes of First Impressions Sports Talk, Go to YouTube and search First Impressions Sports Talk. You can connect with Jasmine on LinkedIn by searching Jasmine Pollock. And now, back to more First Impressions Sports Talk.
Welcome back to more First Impression Sports Talk. I'm your host, Jasmine Pollock, and those voices you heard from our sponsors were Kelly Johnson and Dion Hunter. And if you want voiceover work done, you can always contact Leon at the leonthomasgroup.com to get voiceover work done. And for more promotion, if you want to be on the show, if you want to post your comments, and if you want to keep up the updates regarding myself, you can go to jasmineonsports.com to keep up with that. So the final few minutes that we have, we're going to talk about this guy named Kevin Durant. This guy. Jeremiah. Now, being that Curry has won, being that Golden State won another championship, and Durant's at home, what does this say about Durant's legacy?
Well, when it comes to his legacy, I'm gonna keep it like short and simple with this. It worsened in my opinion, because although when it comes to Durant, he is one of the best scorers you will see of all time, but one of the best scorers. But at the same time, you just see when he's individually himself, individually like on his own team, things don't be going in a great way. Because you just seen they got beat by Boston, and the only team this playoffs to get swept. If that's not, diminishing and everything else, what is? And right now, I would have Curry right now ahead of Kevin Durant when it comes to like all times right now. Yes. Not saying, I'm not hating on Durant or anything else that's like that, but as far as resume and just the type of leader that Curry is for his team, I just have him at just at a greater spot than Kevin Durant right now.
And the situation is very interesting. It's a very interesting situation because you have guys like LeBron who've been through the nitty gritty, been through a lot throughout his career, came in the league at 18. And you have someone like Durant.
Yeah, I totally agree, because when it comes to like a person like what's called LeBron, it's just a different level just of, I'm taking account being taken over when it comes to everything. Because as Kevin Durant, like we said before earlier in the show, I just think that he lacks a certain ability to just take leadership of his team, to take, a bigger part in his role. And, I just feel like right now, Kevin Durant, in order to silence so many people and everything else, I feel like for himself, he needs to actually win himself a championship individually, like on his own team. But again, thanks everybody for tuning in. This is Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. Please do check out her website, jasmineonsports.com. And to make sure, I want to thank, the production crew, Leon and Jay, and of course, Jasmine. I know she is having technical difficulties, but we will see you next week. And thank you for tuning in.